Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. Hi, folks. For our show today, I have I'm going to drop a name right out the beginning of the very beginning of the show. But, I think this goes back about 20 years or so. But some of our listeners may remember that the writer for the Akron Beacon Journal about 25 years ago was Chuck Klosterman, who's gone on to be, of course, a best-selling writer. He wrote the book Fargo, Rock City, and Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs, and about 8 or 9 other books. The 90s, I guess, is his most recent book about that decade. But anyway, the reason I bring him up is because he was a friend of mine, and he called me one day, and he said that he'd been at the Lime Spider. And he said, I saw this band play, and this guy, who was the head guy in the band, who is this guy? He is a rock star. Mm-hmm. He reminded me of Marc Bolan, which, by the way, is the highest of praises in my book, and with Chuck as well.
Really?
And so, of T-Rex, of course. And so I heard him say that, and I said, I think that's got to be Jeff Hardy. And he was like, man, the guy blew me away. And I don't think I've ever told this guy this story, but this guy is Jeff Hardy, and he's our guest. So hi there.
Hello, hello. Do you remember Jeffrey Hardy? They're about to organize a searching party.
Oh, we're so glad to have you here. I remember a few years ago when Bizarro's, we reunited probably 22 years ago, and for whatever reason, we couldn't get gigs. Bob will think there's no surprise in that, but you got us some gigs. We played a couple clubs in Cleveland with you. We even played Annabelle's, of all places, man, with the different incarnations of your band. So thank you.
Well, it was great to have you on board. Yeah, you came to Cleveland and played with Dutch Babies at 5 O'Clock Lounge.
And we played that hot dog place with you, too.
The Happy Dog?
Yeah. Where the people would come in and pay a cover charge, eat hot dogs, and they got us for free, right?
They had pinball, too. It was awesome. They still do.
Usually sports on TV and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stimuli going on.
It's a way to get a good crowd, get the door, because they have to pay to eat, so the band's free.
Right. But anyway, Jeff Hardy has been really a major part of the scene in Akron for a long time, and he's played with lots of different bands. He has lots of different projects, and he's long been on our list of people we wanted to have on the show because I think that he encapsulates a lot of what's cool about Akron rock music, local music, and he also probably has faced a lot of the challenges of doing music and trying to make a living or livelihood or whatever you want to call it, doing music in a town like Akron. So
and he embodies all the good, positive stuff of musicians in Akron.
I would agree with that. So anyway.
That's right. I've been banned since the very beginning, but I'm still at it.
Yeah. Banging your head against the wall. So, Jeff, just a few very basic questions. Are you from Akron? Were you born here?
I was born in Akron. My parents met while working at General Tire.
Oh. Okay.
And we didn't live too far from the General Tire factory till I was 4. And then we moved down 76. Then we moved to Norton, Wadsworth, where I graduated, and then I was back to Akron in search of that Akron sound. Right. When I got back, the Akron sound was gone.
Yeah, right.
But
where did it go?
Missed it by a few
there
years.
were some people, like I met Terry Walker from the Bizarros early on, but there was no bank lounge.
Right.
I never went to the bank. I was too little.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did not see the Dead Boys. I did buy Stiv Bader's Lords of the New Church. That would be my time coming in.
Right. Yeah.
They were currently playing then? They were active?
Yeah, that would be like my era where I was like, oh, this Stiv Bader's is something else. And then I had to go backwards to the Disconnect album. And then I got to Dead Boys.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is good. And then Rocket from the Tombs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where I had no idea there was a Rocket from the Tombs.
Right. Well, a lot of people didn't actually.
No.
They're more legend, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else, but they were great. That's for sure. So, when you were first getting into music, like, do you remember like what the first stuff you kind of like caught your ear, maybe even as a little kid or older? What?
Well, you would be surprised, but I was in a punk band in the early 70s, like 1973. So even before Devo, I was doing it. And there was a guy that stood next to me, and he'd scream every word at the top of his lungs. There was a couple female vocalists that would sort of mumble through the lyrics. And there was a piano player that was kind of okay, but not great. And we were called Lakeview Methodist Children's Choir. And so that's sort of how I started to get up in front of people and do music.
Okay.
And my grandfather played trumpet in a big band, swing band in Marietta, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And he was in the Musicians Union. And my father played trumpet in the marching band in Marietta High School. So the way my father told it to me recently was, I asked you what instrument you would like to play, but the way I remember it is you need to play an instrument. And what are you going to do? And we had a piano in the house, but I was little and my hands were small. And I said, I want to play guitar. And then I got an acoustic guitar. I had a teacher named Mr. Randall, and he had me play the song Orally. And I was like, isn't this Love Me Tender by Elvis? And he goes, well, Elvis just changed the words to this song. This is the original song. And I'm like, you can do that? You can make up your own lyrics? And so when I sang and played that song, like his eyes got big and he's like, oh, you're a really good singer. I'm going to get you in Up With People. If you keep up with this, I'm going to have you on stage.
Right.
And like he saw something in me, or that's the first person that saw something in me musically. And then I sang in the choir. I did not get in Up With People.
Oh, too bad. Sorry. There's always time, though.
And then I guess, and I started doing rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have like a good high school band. It was after high school where I met some people and I had a bass. And we started, I met a guitar player, had some songs. I had some songs. I had been writing, but I wasn't in a band. And my first band, we were called the Creeps.
Okay.
And the guitar player was young, and the drummer they were both in high school. They were like 16-year-olds, and I was 19. And we played 3 shows.
Wow, that's amazing.
We played. I found out later that we were booked just to annoy the owner of the club. But we played on the 4th of July, 1988, I think was when my first bar gig.
Okay.
And we were in downtown Akron on 4th of July, so the place was packed, and we were terrible. But
was it an outdoor gig?
It was inside. There was a small bar called Bauhaus, on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be when I started to do live rock shows.
Right. So you just kind of, I mean, it just happened, right? In a way, right? I mean, you were playing and...
Well, you were buying records.
Spontaneous kind of thing.
And listening to punk music and...
I didn't have anyone older to like guide me with my record purchases, so I didn't buy a lot of records. There weren't a lot of records in the house growing up either, because my parents were young and struggling.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I mean, I could probably tell you the records that were there. Cabaret, The Smell of the Grease Paint, Roar of the Crowd, Meet the Beatles, Hard Day's Night, Animal Tracks. I like those records.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Some Carpenters, some Neil Diamond. There was a lot of Paul Anka, which I never got into, but my mother loved him growing up. Sorry about that.
Edit it out.
Yeah. Just a health alert. No big deal.
Someone's having a heart attack down the hall. That's okay.
Was it when I said Paul Anka? That trigger something?
Paul Anka alert.
Paul Anka alert. And they called it puppy love. But also, Nick, and Bob, I would read a lot. And so I remember reading about Clone. You kind of looked like Serpico back then. There was a picture of you.
They had hair.
Yeah, you looked like a badass. And you had your own record label and you were putting out records. And that was something that was like maybe a light bulb where I was like, oh, well, you can make a record.
See, this is interesting to me because I might not have put it correctly the first time when I said like it just happened, because obviously nothing just happens when you're doing music. But it sounds like me, like I had tons of records. I was always listening to all this different music, always trying to figure out when I started to play drums, like what kind of band I'd want to be in and all this kind of stuff. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but it sounds like you kind of forged your own path in a way. I mean, you were kind of like playing guitar, like you said. You weren't necessarily. I mean, you were hearing things and you were reading about stuff, but you were kind of conjuring up those first tunes on your own, like maybe how you thought they should sound or something.
Well, my grandfather passed away when I was just a baby, so my connection to him was his 78 record collection when I'd go visit my grandma. And there was like an acetate record in there, in that collection of them at a fair where they're saying, hello everybody, and talking. So there was a record there, and my father was in the marching band, and their marching band had an LP. And so it wasn't like out of the question for me to go like, oh yeah, I'm going to have a record too. Or I just thought that's what you did. Like it wasn't, I guess it was a goal that I was trying to achieve, but it didn't seem out of the question for me to pursue that goal.
Right.
And maybe through time, I saw someone like Nick where I was like, oh, there's a way, like there's somebody that's doing it. Or maybe as I got older, there was the SST record label where they were making their own records, and there were bands that were touring. Something like Devo, where I was like, oh, there's people from this area that are doing stuff. Chrissy Hine and the Pretenders, of course. And then even there's some of the Clee punk stuff from the early 80s.
Yeah.
Tom Dark had released a record called The New Hope Comp. His younger brother had a band called The Guns, and they were my age. Like, they were 14 and 15 when they recorded their stuff. So something like that, I was like, oh, there's people like me that are doing something.
Right.
And that record also had the Zero Defex band on it, who I eventually got to play with.
Right.
And Tom Dark, who made the New Hope comp, he had a band called The Dark. And years later, I got to play with him in Dead Federation.
Okay.
So it's kind of, maybe that was something like, oh, I had a record, then I met the people, and then I got to actually play on stage with them.
Right. Now, one band that you're probably known for in this area to a lot of people is CD Truth. Now,
yes.
Would you consider, like, when did that start, and was that...
When I was in my first band, The Creeps, my stage name was CD Truth.
Okay.
And then I was making demos at home. I'd use 2 cassette players. I would record something on one, then I would play that and play along with it and come up with these songs.
Right.
So I had met the drummer Scott Schrade on an ill-fated trip to New York City where I had joined a band and we were going to play at CBGB's. I was pumped.
Wow. Yeah.
I did not know these people well. I was only in the band for 16 days. I'm in a van going to New York. So I'm like, hey, I'm on my way, friends.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Wow.
That was not to happen. All the equipment was stolen. We did not play. And we almost died coming home. But we survived.
Yeah, man.
But that's where I met Scott Schrade. He had a Who shirt on. I said, do you like The Who? He's like, yes. I like The Who also. So we survived the ill-fated trip to New York City. I saw him about a year after that. He said, I'm in a band, but we need a singer. And I said, I'm your man. And I showed up. And that band was called Cyclops. With a PSY, Clops. That had Mike Schubert on guitar. Mike Schubert is now the Mistletoe drummer. So that's kind of when I started playing with him. There was another Mike. Mike Skidmore was the bass player.
Right.
Scott Schrade was the drummer. I learned their songs. I was the singer. Cyclops never played out. We did a lot of rehearsing, and then Mike Schubert, or Shubes, as we call him casually, Shubes was in more than one band, and those other bands were playing out. So there were some rehearsals where he didn't show up.
Right.
And I said, hey, I have these CD Truth songs, if you guys want to try those. And we started playing some of those.
Okay.
And they just kind of went with it. That's why the name is what it is. They said, well, we can just call this CD Truth. And I'm like, okay. Like, we didn't labor over that, and maybe we should have. Like, it's not the greatest band name. But
Well, Bob and I were talking about that a few weeks ago at the record store. A lot of band names are just stupid. But that's not a stupid name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about them objectively, it's kind of like The Who. It's like, The Who? I mean, that's kind of, what does that mean? But it's cool because they're The Who. It's Keith
Big
Moon
Audio
and
Dynamite.
Townsend or whatever. Yeah, right.
yes, the Truth came from Peter Tosh, his version of Get Up, Stand Up.
Yeah.
He starts with the live version, starts with going, we want the truth, we want the truth. And so that's where that came from. And then the CD was like See The.
Okay.
So it is supposed to have like a reggae feel.
Gotcha. Okay.
CD Truth, man. But, I mean, it's evolved over time. Like, there's jokes now, like D's Nuts. So it could be like CD's Nuts or CD Truth. I don't know. And then we wanted the C and the D to stand for different things at different times. And we sort of represented that in our albums. Like our first album, CD. Our second album, Chemically Dependent. Our final album, Completely Destroyed. You get the CD in different ways.
Right.
But CD Truth lasted 20 years.
Really?
Yeah.
We were not popular for 20 years. And I would challenge anyone to do that. We didn't tank, like we didn't lose a lot of money or anything. We sold stuff.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a hit song.
Right.
We just lasted a long time.
You had staying power. But you say you didn't have a hit song, but I Hate Route 8 is a song that people know.
Yeah.
And
we had
Last of the Highland Square Losers.
King of the Highland Square Losers.
Sorry, yeah. Which I mispronounced.
Based on a true story. As is I Hate Route 8.
But man, you're
we've all lived that story, the Route 8 one.
Sure, we're gonna talk a little bit about your band that you're so well known for, Mistletoe. But some of the versions. Yeah, right.
Did you say Mistletoe?
Yeah.
Nick, it's too early in the year to bring up Christmas music. See what happens?
Yeah. Some of your versions of the old traditional stuff is just crazy, man.
The world's greatest Christmas band.
We're going to get to Mistletoe in a second.
All right.
But I want to talk about CD Truth a little bit more because you guys were kind of definitely part of the scene. When we did the it's come up 100 times on the show, but the Nicked Up Huey's benefit.
Nicked Up Huey's?
Yeah, CD Truth was, involved in that. In fact,
big time.
You
tagged us on that bill. I was thrilled to death. That's CD Truth was not designed to be the stars or the headliner, or we didn't have any aspirations to be superstars. We just wanted to open up for bands that we liked. We wanted to do our own thing, which we did. And so to get to play like that event, that checks some boxes because that's the first time we got to play with the Bizarros.
Black Keys.
The Black Keys played.
Yeah.
So,
Huey,
that's the only
Unit 5.
time
Right.
our band ever was listed in Billboard magazine was because we opened that show. Or even just something like I always enjoyed Chai Pig, but that was the first time I stood in front of them while they were just crushing the fretboards and playing. I was like, whoa, this is something else.
Yeah.
Or maybe even Tin Huey, too, which I liked it, but it wasn't until I saw Tin Huey that I was like, oh, there was so much going on, and I kind of heard the old recordings a different way.
Right, sure.
Because I saw all the interplay between the musicians.
Right.
Made me appreciate things more.
Yeah.
It was important for you to be there because you were such a part of, the scene, You outlasted all. I mean, you were there longer than the rest of us.
We carried the torch after the Akron sound era and the bank
It's a good
and
way
all
of
of
putting
that.
It's a good way of putting it.
Had sort of, I don't know what happened, but everybody moved.
Yeah.
I think maybe winter of '78, and everyone said, "I'm out of here. There's too much snow."
Moved or started raising families.
Yeah.
Farming kids. Yeah.
And there were also those few bands that ended up with record contracts with pretty big labels, and so they would move to New York or whatever, and then
move back.
And then there was a recession in the record business, and everything kind of bottomed out, so they'd end up back. But the bands were kind of over at that point, or at least on hiatus for a while. CD Truth, the music kind of changed, didn't it, from the beginning as you guys went on, or am I wrong?
The original first few years of CD Truth was not punk in any way. Like we had been in punk bands, and so we were going to do Sid and Marty Krofft style 70s music that we liked as kids growing up, or novelty songs were okay. AM radio songs, like things that ended up on the Have a Nice Day comps, things that were... I mean, we were also into the 60s protest music, so we were looking for a different way than just rocking out and screaming at people.
Right.
actually, when I Hate Route 8 came about, that was a big dividing point in the band because while Mike Skidmore thought that song was funny and he laughed when we played him the demo, he was like, I don't want to do this song because it was a punk rock song.
Right.
And that he had aspirations more in the prog rock area.
Yeah.
So, and he also, when we're still friends, I saw him recently, and he went on to make his own music that's very prog and synth based.
Right.
But when John Lee came in 1995, we had I Hate Route 8, and we sort of rebuilt the band, and things got tougher and more rock.
Right.
Where we could head into a Stooges type territory or Ramones territory, and it was fine.
Yeah, I know John was a big Bad Brains guy, right? Yeah.
Yes. And so there were no limits, no laws. That's when there were limits and laws in the beginning. Right.
Is that the fellow that worked at the library with you?
Yeah, actually, both Mike Skidmore and John Lee worked at the library.
And Scott Trade. I had to work with all the...
Yeah, everybody but Jeff.
They were good at cataloging things whenever...
Didn't know about music, but no, just kidding.
You're listening to Frequency 530 AM. This is the construction advisory radio station for motorists traveling on interstates in the Akron, Ohio area. Have a happy and safe holiday. This message will repeat in just a moment.
Well, that's not true. I couldn't afford records growing up, so I would go to the downtown library, and that was a window.
Yeah, sure.
I would take out the Devo videotapes of their first two films and watch them.
Yeah.
I'd have to go to my friend's house because they had a VCR. but the library was where I got the first Devo record, things like Parallel Lines by Blondie.
Yeah.
And then, so to be in bands with library people was totally cool.
Right. Library people are totally cool.
They are. It's a helpful job.
It is, absolutely. So this is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington, and with my co-host Nick Nicholas, we are talking with Jeff Hardy. And so, Jeff, CD Truth, we've talked about. Let's move on from there. You've been in a lot of bands and had a lot of projects, and we'll ultimately end up with your Christmas band. But before we get there, talk about some of the other stuff you've done over these years. I know Dead Federation. I know you were involved with Zero Defex.
Dutch Babies.
Yeah.
That's true. CD Truth lasted 20 years. 1990 to 2010. 2010 is when we stopped. And when we stopped, I had a lot of songs written beyond that time, and I didn't feel like I was done.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can explain this. 2005, there was a show called Cleveland Screaming that Jim Lanza put together.
Okay, yeah.
You know how the Sex Pistols said, "And England's Dreaming"? Well, he put a show together called "And Cleveland Screaming."
Okay.
And Zero Defex got to play that first show, and Jimmy Image called me on the phone and asked me if I would fill in on guitar. And I guess at that time I just thought it was the one show, or that's all that was in front of me at that time.
Sure, right.
So we played the show. It was great. It was at the Beachland. We played in the Beachland ballroom side.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And so that was also fueled by the bass player Brad Warner, who had written a book called Hardcore Zen, which was about his time in Zero Defex and the way he became a Zen Buddhist priest.
Right. Yeah.
I was good with Zero Defex coming in because I knew how the songs went. I'd never played them, but I knew them, and I was good at reminding them. You know, I'd say, "What about the song where you go, 'How can I sleep tonight?'" And they'd go, "Oh yeah, that's called Turn It Red." "No, just found out." "Well, it was just found out. Then it was Turn It Red." And then we would. That's sort of how. Like I was good at steering the set list together.
Yeah.
And then let's see.
That's funny because that does happen sometimes. Sometimes other people know the songs better than
that's the way our
guys.
band,
right.
our band works.
I see things from a different way where they were in the band and I was a person listening to cassettes and LPs of the band.
Yeah.
And then what I learned once I was in Zero Defex was those songs, that's just the way they played it that day. There's not really one way to play each song. And so when I learned them, I was sort of going off of what I had heard.
Right.
Then Jimmy would play me like an older version. I'd be like, "Why didn't you play me this? This is better." Or "I made it worse." Or whatever. I'll always be the Kenny Jones of Zero Defex. I'm not the original guy. People like to remind me often that I'm not Tommy Strange. "You're not Tommy Strange. You're Cousin Oliver." Or I'm that new guy that showed up. I'm like the Shemp of Zero Defex. But Shemp was funny.
He was funny, yes, and you're good.
And that's the thing is I have more comedy in what I do, whereas Tommy Strange has a very strong opinion and is very politically aware. And so that's maybe something that's changed with me involved.
Right.
But Tommy Strange is always welcome to play. He still writes songs that he's added to Zero Defex in this modern time. Like he's still a friend and involved.
Okay, cool. All right.
He's doing his own thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what happened after that? Let's see. 2007, I was asked to play guitar in a Cleveland band called the Heathers.
Okay.
And the Heathers kind of spun out of a band that was called the Vivians.
Yeah, all right. Mm-hmm.
And the Vivians were 3 women, 1 male drummer. I was a fan of the Vivians. Michelle Temple, their guitar player, is someone, when I was starting out, I would ask her things about the guitar. I'm like, "How do you get that big sound?" Or "How do you make that feedback that's cool, but it doesn't hurt your ears?"
That's interesting. I actually have probably a 10-year-old CD from a girl band called the Vivians from Brooklyn, New York. I mean, I'm just saying it's a coincidence.
Yeah, different band.
Not the same.
You're correct. There is another Vivians. There's a band called Vivian Girls as well. But this is the Cleveland Vivians. And like I said, Michelle Temple, she did give me some good advice starting out on guitar. She showed me the bar chord while we were standing in a bar. So I was stupid. I thought that she meant this is the chord you play when you're in a bar.
That's great.
And I'll tell that story as long as I can. Michelle Temple went on to join Home and Garden, and then she became the bass player in Perubu.
Okay.
Oh, I've seen her.
Yeah, she's good,
Yeah,
right?
she's great.
She can
she
play
toured with
anything.
them too. Toured in Europe with them.
Recorded in the studio.
She's great.
And she is in New York area now. But she can play anything with strings.
Yeah.
I remember when she was talking about playing the lute. So as Michelle took off with her career in music, the bass player and drummer were still in Cleveland, and this band called the Heathers started. And I used to go see them. CD Truth got to open for the Heathers. They were kind enough to let us play at the Grog Shop with them.
Okay.
Because it was hard for CD Truth to go to Cleveland and play. There was like a division there. It wasn't unity. CD Truth had better luck going to Kent, Cincinnati, Columbus, Youngstown. We seemed welcome. And then when we would go to Cleveland, they're tough up there.
Yeah,
We know that.
yeah, that's come up before. Is a sort of, I don't know if it still exists or not, but there definitely historically was a sort of weird Cleveland Akron division in a way, and it was like the only way it would ever really work was if the Akron band would go and open for a Cleveland band, or vice versa, because it was kind of what worked the other way.
That was tough too, though.
Yeah,
it was just a tough period.
Yeah.
Well, what I found when I got to play with the Heathers was that I was part of a Cleveland band, and that division was not there, and I was welcome, and we were playing at the Grog Shop, and we were playing good shows where people were showing up, and the band was making money. We went to New York and played. And so I thought I was in a band.
Yeah.
But what happened was David Thomas stole the drummer, Steve Melman.
Yeah, I know him too.
Steve went with them and did Rocket from the Tombs.
Right, when they
Perubu. He was involved with that as well through Michelle.
Okay.
Because Steve was the Vivian's drummer at the end.
Oh, wow.
So that's how the lineage worked.
Yeah.
So that kind of wasn't good, because I learned their set, and then he's like, "See you guys, I'm going to Australia." And he was gone. And with the Heathers, the guitar player Rebecca was working for Michael Simon, who was blowing up as a celebrity chef.
Right.
And so it just seemed like everyone's careers took them away from that band.
Right.
And I saw some other stuff, but I'm not going to talk about that. But there was some other stuff.
We'll leave it there.
Then next,
Well, that kind of took me up to 2010, where there was no CD Truth.
Right.
There was no Heathers. There was still Zero Defex, but there wasn't a lot of activity because the bass player Brad was living in Los Angeles, and so it was sort of like a homecoming event. If he was in the area, we would do it. Or one time he's like, "I'm going to be in Detroit," and we didn't even rehearse. We just drove to Detroit, kind of talked about the songs, and then we played a show. But he's an author, so sometimes he gets to go to different cities and talk about his books.
Right.
So I guess 2010, Tom Madigan, who played with Jimmy Image in the Plasma Alliance band, Tom Madigan saw me, and he said, "Hey, I got this band started. Do you want to play guitar?" It has the drummer from The Plague, the singer from Knife Dance, and myself. And that would be Tom Dark and Mike Ramone. And this was like a super group to me from where I'm standing.
Yeah.
And so I showed up with a couple tunes, and that band became Dead Federation.
oh,
It was a band before I arrived. It was a band. There were people involved that weren't there when I got to that group.
Right.
And then, and we played horror punk, which I didn't know there's a whole universe that's horror punk. I knew the Misfits. I didn't know that there was a whole society built upon that idea. But I liked it because I could dress in black and be a ghoul. My character, Ghoul Hardy.
oh, that's beautiful.
Excellent.
We had a lot of ghoul stuff in Northeast Ohio, right?
Yeah, big time.
Ghoulardi, the ghoul,
The
son
Ghoul.
of ghoul, daughter of the ghoul. And so I thought Ghoulardi would be a good, if I ever got into that horror thing, that would be my name.
Right.
And that band we were good. We played with the Misfits maybe 5 times.
Oh, yeah.
Angry Samoans. We were getting good shows because Tom Dark works hard. And he's the kind of person that you would want in your band as a vocalist. Like if you strum a song, he's got a notebook. He'll open it up and go, I got something. And then you'll have a song. Or if you like, boy, we sure do need a show, he'll book it. So it was good to have someone like that to play with. Unfortunately, being in that horror punk band, it was a lot like being in a horror movie because people would disappear and there was a lot of different members. Like, where did Travis go? I haven't seen him or heard from him for weeks. Is he okay? And then a new guy would come in.
Right.
Or a new woman.
Right.
And so that's what happened when we finally got to the Friday the 13th part 5 of that band. It just sort of, I decided not to sign up for the next sequel.
Right. You were afraid you were going to be the one that
Disappeared.
That's right. I just spin off into my own series. But another thing that happened during that time was Gina, the singer from the Heathers, she had been talking to a drummer and bass player, and we started a band called Dutch Babies.
Okay.
Well, it became Dutch Babies. When we started, it was called Team of Rivals,
Okay.
which is a good explanation of how that band operates, because it was 4 people that were... we were all trying to one-up each other,
Yeah.
I would say. But John Scully and Mike Zubel were in a band called Numbskull. I was a fan of Numbskull. They had a record. I saw them in the 80s. I liked them. So to get to play with them, it was another like feather in my cap where I was pleased to play with some people. And I had some songs that just worked for that group and for Gina's voice. And we didn't hit it as hard as maybe Dead Federation did with the gigs, but it was kind of like 2 bands that were going at the same time for me. And Gina was the same way as Tom Dark. If I'd play a song, she'd say, "Oh, I have something," and she'd look through her notes, and there would be a song. Like, I have to say that for 9 years, I had 2 vocalists that liked to write poetry, and I didn't have to write a word because my lyrics are not the greatest.
Those were fun shows that the Bizarros did with you.
I was happy to play with the Bizarros to get to, or that's one of my things. If I get to open for people that I've always enjoyed, then I'm happy.
And so Dutch Babies was pretty much all original material, or?
It was. What I did with my songs is the songs that sounded tough and evil, those songs went to Dead Federation in the horror punk world. And the songs that were arty and maybe in like a Sonic Youth's kind of zone, those songs went to the Dutch Babies.
Okay.
And I sing good with Tom Dark, and I sang good with Gina. Because I'm kind of a mimic in the way I do my vocals. So as a backup person, or even with Jimmy Image, like we do a thing where Jimmy's the big dog and I'm the little dog. You know, he'll be like, "Oh, oh," and I'll go, "Ah, ah." And I can sing. I have a good female voice, so singing with Gina was fine. could strengthen it.
Yeah.
And Tom Dark, I would do the big dog, little dog thing too.
Yeah.
With him, because he was the big dog on the stage.
Right.
Psst. Tesla's death ray is based on atomic clusters of mercury.
Dutch Babies, I think I aged out. I think it was like Menudo, where I just got too old, and they wanted to keep it youthful for the babies
Right.
thing.
Right.
And I'm not in the band, but I will assist them in any way.
Oh, they're still around.
There is a Dutch Babies still. I'm just not in it.
Yeah.
I'm just a solo artist now, Nick.
Yeah, sure.
I've gone solo. This is what I've been doing a lot.
All right.
Oh, that's not coming out good.
Need an earthquaker device on that. There you go.
I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but that's what I do now.
Someday.
I'm waiting for the double album.
I'm going country, guys. Howdy, y'all.
You're listening to From Akron and Beyond with Bob Ethington and Nick Nicholas on the Summit FM. 91.3 WAPS Akron Canton, WAPS HD1 Akron, and 90.7 FM WKTL Struthers Youngstown. Also heard in Athens, Ohio on 90.1 FM, W211BT Athens. You're listening to From Akron and Beyond.
We have a little time left, so let's talk about Mistletoe. How did that start? What was the idea? Because people love Mistletoe.
Man.
James Millar and Dale Houston contacted me, and they asked me, this is 1998, they contacted me, and they said, would you like to sing some Christmas songs, and we'll probably do some Johnny Thunders songs also. And I said, okay.
Match made in
James had a band called the Subterraneans in the 80s, and that was like one of the first bands that I ever went to a practice where I saw a rock band doing a rehearsal. When I was 18, the drummer let me carry some drums in to Mother's.
How kind of it.
You had to be 19 to get in, so I got in like a year early. And I didn't get into Mother's every time, just that one time. Carrying a drum is how I got in there. But they also did something at Cascade Plaza in downtown Akron where I carried some gear.
Yeah.
And so I always liked them, and it was cool to be to show up and get to play with them. And year one, there was a different guy playing drums. So we got a set together. This was probably around Halloween. So we got a set together around Halloween to Christmas. And when we played the show, I came out on stage in a one-piece red union suit and combat boots, and the drummer was upset. He wouldn't even look up and look at me, and I used to do more shows with not much clothing back then because I was hot. I do not do that now because it's inappropriate for a person in my age group.
And
But
Nick,
this is
don't
a
get
long-
any ideas, okay?
Do it.
Oh, man.
You gotta, or they call it a show, right?
Right,
So
yeah.
you show stuff.
Right.
So year one, we were not the world's greatest Christmas band.
Okay. Hadn't
And
grown into that yet.
Mike Schubert, who goes back to my earlier part, he was playing drums in the Nimrods, and we were roommates. The CD Truth had a house where it was John Lee, Mike Schubert, and myself, and the Nimrods practiced there, and CD Truth, and Mistletoe did. So I said, Mike, could you please just play these songs? It's going to be good. And it was good. And we made a 4-track demo, and it came out good. Like, I was surprised because that was something we did at the house all the time, was make 4-track demos.
Yeah.
And so we decided to go into a studio in North Hill that had a 2-inch tape, and we made an album like in one night. We made it quick,
Yeah.
because we didn't have a lot of money, and we just pounded it out.
Yeah.
And then we pressed it to CDs, and then we became the world's greatest Christmas band. It seemed like after we had our first album, we started getting opportunities,
Right.
and it has grown. Like, I don't necessarily try to book that band anymore. It's mostly people contacting the group.
Nice.
And we get hired to play
Yeah.
events. We will go to people's homes.
Oh, really?
We will play in a bar. When we started, we were a bar band.
Yeah.
And then it became, we used to do childish things in a bar late at night, and then it's turned into a thing where there's actual children there. And toddlers love us.
You were great at the art museum.
We got to play at the Akron Art Museum for over a decade.
Yeah.
For maybe 10 or 12 years, we had a run.
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, when there were no shows, the art museum asked us to come and play, and we played in one of the galleries. And they filmed us, and they aired it on YouTube. So that was kind of nice, because there was no shows in 2020.
Right.
So in December, this past December, we did 7 shows. And also, we've been a band, I've done it for 26 years now. So we made a second album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I own both.
And so we're a cover band, but we've made albums. And I think the stuff I like is when we take a public domain old Christmas song and rev it up.
Right.
That's what some people say, that I'm, what's the word? Irreverent. That was the word they used. But I think we're just high energy.
Jeff,
And listen to my voice. It's an elfish type voice. I was made to sing those songs. My voice has that quality. And when I get going, that's why people think it's irreverent, because it just sounds like a whiny person.
yeah, that's great. Jeff,
But I have different ways I can do it, too.
Has the lineup changed very much in 26 years?
The drummer from year one,
Yeah.
he was mad. He never returned because of my outfit. And so once I got Shoobs to play drums, it's been the same.
Beautiful. Twice, that's a heck of a long time.
And Shoobs, he did request at a certain point that I wear pants because he's the drummer and he didn't enjoy the view. And it's hard to keep a good drummer like Shoobs, so I've been wearing pants.
You better watch out, you better not cry, better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Santa Claus is coming to town.
The compromises you have to make, right? For art.
Yeah,
sometimes.
and then I also, maybe year one when we got booked at the Akron Art Museum, I thought they wanted what we were doing in the bar. So I wore an elf costume, and I'm like, here we go. and they said, hey, you got to turn it down 2 notches. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, no, 2 notches. And then I realized my notches are different size. I have to turn it down 10 notches. And maybe I shouldn't have worn a funny costume that first year. Maybe I should have wore a suit and tie or something. But I didn't know. I didn't see it that way. I saw it as, oh, they want that show we did in the bar. Here we go. And I started doing it different ways.
Toning it down.
Right.
Like Like I can do it in Bobby Sherman voice, where it's like, better watch out, better not cry, better not pout, I'm telling you why. I call that Bobby Sherman voice. Then I can do it in the CD Truth voice, which is like, better watch out, better not cry, better not pout, I'm telling you why. And then I can do it in a small dog barking voice. Better watch out, you better not cry, better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town.
That's the one you're known for. That's beautiful.
So I have different ways I can do those songs.
Right.
So if I show up...
Depending on the venue.
Yeah.
Right. If I show up to, we're going to light the boulevard or we're going to put up a Christmas tree, I will go, better watch out, better not cry. But I didn't know that the first couple years. I was just small dog barking every time. Or CD Truth voice, which is stress voice.
Yeah, yeah. But it's true, like what Nick was saying, it seemed like this last holiday season, you guys were playing every week easily from like a little before Thanksgiving through the Christmas, I think, weren't you? It seemed that way. So there was always
Night
a new
before
gig coming up.
Thanksgiving is a good rock and roll bar night.
Sure, right.
So we'll do that show, and we usually play more covers during that one because people aren't totally ready for the holidays. But like I said, if someone wants us, you can just contact the Mistletoe Facebook page, or you can contact me. I always look at the blimp, so if you want to put a message on the blimp, I will see that too. But we tried real hard when we were starting out to get shows. Not everybody got it, or they thought that we were strictly a praise band. Mm-hmm. Like I remember trying to get a show, and the guy's like, "We don't need any Jesus freaks in here," and I'm like, "Well." I didn't have an argument for that because we kind of were freaks singing songs about baby Jesus. So I just went to another place and said, how about this?
So before we let you go, so you've sort of mentioned that you're in a rare period for you, I guess, of being sort of without a band except for Mistletoe come the holiday season. And so
quit.
Are you are you working on stuff that you can play solo? Are you working on stuff with a theoretical band in the future, or are you just kind of taking a breather for a while?
Remember when I said there were songs I made that I called CD Truth. Mm-hmm. Then it became a rock band called CD Truth. Yeah. And now CD Truth has returned to its original form where it's just me alone again, but I just call it Jeff Hardy because if I said CD Truth is playing, people would expect that rock band.
Sure. Right.
But to me, it's me. Mm-hmm. It's just... So I'm doing that. Yeah. I have a lot of material that I have from my 4-track demos. I put a full-length album out called Pan Demos last year, which were songs I made during the pandemic.
Right.
But also pan meaning many. Mm-hmm. When I was laid off, I started recording stuff.
Yeah.
And I got a bunch of stuff done. Mm-hmm. I did some songs that Zero Defex played on. I gave John Lee a song, John from CD Truth.
Right.
He had a song idea called Dating a Girl from Dayton.
Wow.
And that falls into our regional type songs.
Yeah.
And then I basically made an album of my demos, but I took it as far as I could. I made my demos like I've made my albums in the past. Mm-hmm. that was the way CD Truth used to operate, was I would make some demos, they would listen to it, then they would roast me.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Or it went on for so long that sometimes they would just shout out a grade. They'd be like, C, B minus, F. And so I made this last thing I put out. If you listen to it, it would kind of be like if you were in a band with me, this is what it's like. Like, what do you think of this? But I took it as far as I could on my own. And now I found a way to work where I'm just going to do it that way because I feel like I'm bothering people. Where I'm like, hey, are we going to practice? No. Hey, did you book a show? No. Hey, did you learn how to play my song? No. Did you listen to it? No. So instead of like putting people through all this trauma, I'm just going to do it alone. And I was influenced.
It's not easy being in a band. Man.
Yeah, I was
really
influenced
isn't.
by rap music too, so I'm going to do it like the rappers do, where maybe I have a DJ or I have some tracks. And I did have a one-man show that I occasionally did in the 90s. It was called Jeffro Small.
Okay, yeah.
No.
Right.
But I'm not going to do Jeffro Small again because Jeffro Small used to make a mess. I'd bring a bag of flour and I'd start tossing it around and I'd pour it on my head. And that was a different character that I'm just going to be me from now on.
Right.
I'm just going to be Jeff Hardy and come out with maybe my guitar.
Right.
Bring the 67 SG Junior, get some beats going behind me. And I have some, I could do my last release. I have all the tracks from the last CD Truth album. I could show up somewhere and just do that.
Right.
But I'd like to have options, so I've been going through the songs. And I was gonna put out a release of all my demos. I have 84 of them.
No.
And I'm up to 27. I've mixed 27 of them. So I got a ways to go before it really turns into my one-man show again. I don't know if I'm needed in the live setting.
Yeah.
I'm kind of been clearing the way so other people can do their thing.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up or I'm not done.
Right.
But there's not like a strong demand. Mistletoe has a strong demand, and I'm very grateful that I get to do that.
Right.
And I'm happy when we put on those Christmas shows. And then, if you need me beyond that, I'll do something. I haven't figured out how to do my one-man show again. I'm almost there.
Yeah.
I think I need a tablet with the tracks.
Yeah. Well, let us know when that happens.
We'll be there.
I'll let you know, and I'll open up for you.
Okay.
How's that?
That worked. Yeah. You can open... Glenn
Once
Laser
again,
theoretically has some gigs coming up.
Yeah,
so.
I don't want to be... Like I said, I never wanted to be the star or the headline act. I wanted to be the opener.
Now, see, that's
good
the opposite
opener.
of Nick. Nick wants to be the star, and so
he
would
is.
love you to open for him. But he is the star, right?
Nick,
so he pulled it off.
What was your best-selling clone record? Or clone
release?
Label? Yeah, what was
the Rubber City Rebels Bizarro's split LP from Akron album?
Oh, yeah.
And that's a historic thing. Yeah, that's a great record.
I'm proud of that
That's
one.
something that...
Actually, I'm proud of that one and Bowling Balls Volume 2.
Those were the best-selling clone.
Yeah, I'm proud of those two because the first one got everything started, and then the other one I got to have all these great bands. On one, the whole world found out that there were a lot more bands in Akron than just Devo and
It was a good
Chrissy.
representation.
Yeah.
Of bands. Yeah.
So I'm proud of
I
that.
think Rubber City Rebels were my favorite as a teenager.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Where it just I like novelty music, and so those songs I found they were funny,
Right.
You know, I even had, besides Bob's band, a Unit 5 on that second Bowling Balls album. You know, I also had that band from Japan on there, Totsuzan Don Ball. So I was proud of that. I mean, you know.
What about you, Bob? What's your best-selling release that you were on, that you played on?
I guess it would have to be the Unit 5 album, Scared of the Dark, because that sold pretty well, actually.
Got some good reviews, just didn't sell as much as it deserved.
As we'd hoped or whatever.
As it deserved.
But it was, but no, I mean,
we're still in this.
I don't think of music in terms of not only of sales, but of money. You know, I mean, every now and then we make money playing a gig, and I'm like, to me, it's just like it fell from the sky. You know, I played so many gigs where I never got any money because, like in Unit 5, we would always put all this money back into we had a bank account for the band. We always put this money into that, you know, because we had our own PA, we had our own van that we bought that was just for the band and stuff. So then when everything was done, it was like, well, there's no money.
Yeah, I remember those.
CD Truth was good about any dollar that we made went into a savings.
Band fund.
Yeah.
And we knew, we never really talked about it much, but we knew if we spent $1,000 to make something or go in a studio, we were like, well, we need to book 20 shows so we can make, but we didn't talk about it. We just did it.
Interesting.
Just sort of understand.
I'd say Mistletoe was the best album. The first Mistletoe is the one
well, it's great,
that sold the most.
Yeah.
But CD Truth, there were things where we'd make 500 and we would sell them, or our 7-inch, there's 300 and they sold. But I mean, that's not big numbers. It's not like when Dink got signed, or Ripper Owens, or maybe other people in the area, the Gods. We never sold like the Gods did. But they're a rock and roll machine.
That's true.
You know, we're just
you can't compete with
just
that.
three guys.
That's great. All right, our guest has been Jeff Hardy, and it's been a lot of fun having you here, Jeff. Hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is From Akron and Beyond, and we will see you next time.
Oh, you got to keep that.
We'll keep that in.
Yeah, Big Chuck. Yeah.